Welcome to another episode of InkSoft's Sell More Merch podcast. I'm your host, JP Hunt. Now, in today's episode, we're going to talk about the halo effect. And more specifically, I want to share with you how you can leverage online fundraising stores using branded merchandise to enhance and fully leverage the potential and the power of the halo effect. So really, the main thesis I want to communicate today is doing good is good for business. So let's get into a definition. I'll share an example with you, and then we'll break down some practical tips that will keep you on point as it relates to leveraging the halo effect in your fundraising marketing. So here's the definition. We'll start with a little background. So the halo effect was a term invented in 1920 by an American psychologist, Edward Thorndike. And really the definition is simple. The halo effect is about creating and then leveraging positive impressions. And we all know the benefit of creating a positive first impression, right? So here's an example of the power of creating and then leveraging positive impressions. And let's look at Apple as an example. So when Apple had first launched and introduced the iPad, it was a massive product success, right? But if you zoom out, the impact the iPod had on introducing new consumers to the Apple brand and then creating a positive impression from one product, and that the benefit that had on having those new consumers adopt even more Apple products that were more expensive, like iMacs and MacBooks. So that's exactly what the iPod did for Apple. And really, if we look back in time, the iPod really gave birth to a tremendous range of additional products, like the iWatch as an example. So again, in a quick sort of case study, Apple launched a singular, relatively low-cost product in comparison, which was a way to introduce new consumers to the brand, create an amazing and first positive experience that extended and was able to help Apple leverage and monetize that customer relationship even greater. So the reality is this. Let's kind of shift focus and bring some context with how fundraising fits into the halo effect. Now, by offering fundraising as part of your marketing mix, fundraising is really seen as virtuous, right? It creates goodwill. It's a positive thing, which establishes the halo effect for your business. Now, I want to call out for a moment's time, there's actually an effect, the inverse of the halo effect, known as the horn effect. So you can kind of see the play on symbology here, right? Halo is always seen as virtuous and positive and good, whereas the horn, example, the devil horn is seen as negative, right? So the reality is we've all had a negative experience with a restaurant or a brand or a product or a person. And what does that do? That negative experience creates dislike of that product or brand, which then what? Perpetuates, right? With a negative review or dissuading a friend from engaging with that particular product. So bringing additional context into these two sort of competing and oppositional forces, right? So how do we really leverage the notion of fundraising to maximize the full effect of really the halo effect, right? So here's a few tips for you. Actively promote your fundraising capabilities and offering. This is something that ought to be in your marketing calendar as a monthly obligation. And I think there's really two ways to tell the fundraising story. The most obvious way is if you're doing a fundraising campaign, put that campaign on full display. It's an amazing opportunity to do a thoughtful blog post, social media postings, enhance your website. It's a great source of content marketing. Now, when you're not actively showcasing, other consumers, the success of a fundraising campaign that you've supported through your capabilities and through your product offering, well, you can talk about the benefits of your fundraising campaigns and programs. So you can kind of alternate between showing, sort of in lifestyle, what you're doing with a particular fundraising client, but then you can talk about your capabilities. So it's a great way to, alternate the story. Now, the next contemplation here is something that we saw borne out as a result of the Here for Good local community fundraising program that became a thing during COVID, right? So the thing that we saw and was on full display, print shops and apparel decorators, promotional product distributors who embraced this fundraising program turned to local media outlets to get press coverage, to draw attention, to create awareness, to create more demand and upside for fundraising programs. Now, when you seek press coverage, it's newsworthy. If you are doing something good in your community and it's having impact on a nonprofit or an organization, it's always seen as newsworthy, which media outlets tend to bring coverage to, right? Now, when seeking press coverage, you're sort of doing two things. You're bringing awareness to your fundraising campaign, which is going to have a direct benefit on your fundraising client, the recipient. So it's good no matter what. But the other upside is, of course, you're creating free press and free media coverage that will create a favorable, positive impression for your business. The other contemplation here is that becomes evergreen marketing content. It lives on forever. So if there is a local press coverage that's in a video, you can, leverage that to live in a blog post forever. You can share it on social media. It's something that just perpetuates. Future prospects can visit a blog post and see that offering and see that story. So again, this just lives on and you can recycle it, right? So as soon as you get local press coverage, you can turn that into social media captions to promote that coverage. So there's a lot of ways to get uplift here in your newsletters. Again, to tap into that content marketing that we talked about earlier, which is always putting on full display your marketing, your fundraising capabilities, right? So let me kind of summarize with what we sort of our thesis that we started with, right? So doing good is good for business. And by actively promoting your fundraising capabilities, you're going to enhance the halo effect. So a consumer might be introduced to your company as a result of exposure to a fundraising campaign. Well, they might reach out to you because they have promotional and marketing needs that you can fulfill. So you've already established some positivity here. You've created a positive first impression. So there's very few marketing strategies that are backed by some human psychology that will do and produce, an enhanced brand loyalty, will help with customer retention, will help with brand awareness, will help sort of accelerate word of mouth marketing and referrals. So the halo effect is sort of simple in concept, right? But it has a lot of powerful benefits. And I'll point out that a lot of companies can't take advantage of the halo effect because of the industry they're in, maybe the product category they're in. They just can't really create goodwill from the things that they're doing, right? So fundraising is special, and my hope is this encourages you to get more active in your fundraising presence. So if it's something that you do passively, maybe you'll put some more efforts into your marketing calendar to enhance your marketing capabilities. If you've been on the sidelines with fundraising, now is the time to invest in fundraising capabilities now more than ever. So as the economy recovers in a post-COVID environment, organizations and companies and groups need fundraising now more than ever. And we did a blog post not too long ago and shared some of the data. But during COVID, these nonprofit and a lot of these organizations were hit super hard. They had to lay off personnel that were responsible for driving fundraising campaigns. So now these organizations need you and your capabilities now more than ever. So the timing couldn't be better to get more invested in fundraising. And my hope is now that you understand the power of the halo effect, you'll be encouraged now more than ever. Well, thanks for listening, and we'd love to hear your feedback. So if you have examples of the halo effect in action, or if there's topics that you'd like to see, sort of processed and covered in a forthcoming Sell More Merch podcast, we'd love to hear from you. So you can always reach out to me directly, jphunt@inksoft.com. Well, until our next episode together, thanks for tuning in.